I'm Narelle Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
Hey everyone, we're here today to talk about coping with life. Now, when you're an author, it can be a little overwhelming when everything kind of piles on. And we want to give you 3 tips that will help you with your resiliency, that will help you deal with the unexpected events that happen in life. So what we're going to do, 3 tips for you today. And our first one, I'm going to hand over to Susan. She's the author of this duo. So she knows all about these 3 tips and how she uses them in her business to stay on top of things when life happens and things happen. We certainly can't get away from that. Susan, our first tip.
Life happens. It doesn't all stay where you want, nice and planned. It's not on my list today to deal with these different incidences that happen. I don't know how many times it's like, I'm just like, that's not part of my list, so go away.
That's so true. Or if you've got something like a book launch, and then all of a sudden your technology just crashes and dies on you.
When you're on the phone and somebody rings the doorbell and you've got dinner boiling over and the dog or the cat's wanting attention and all of these major events that happen at one time. And most people, especially women, tend to be very good at multitasking. But even sometimes we reach our limits.
Sounds good. What's your first tip?
So my first tip is setting parameters. You've got to know when you've got to put the lines, and then when it crosses over, know when it does do that crossover and what to do when it does happen. So knowing your boundaries helps you, but also one of the key things is to share those boundaries with others, especially those that are in your life. There's always going to be some that are like way out there that you're not expecting, but the ones that are immediately in your house, they need to know what your boundaries are. So you set that line and you share it often. And I cannot say that enough, because often is something that they tend to forget. For example, if you know that you're going to be working from this time to this time and you need to get something done, let them know. If you've got to post a note on your door and shut that door, if you just need to verbally tell them, if you need to make arrangements for a quiet time, then make sure that that period that you need is set. But make sure that you've accepted that, because if you're going to be lenient on it and you're going to say, well, it'll only take a minute for this and it'll only take a minute for that, then you're doing self-defeating for your own sake. And by then, your blood pressure is going up, your anxiety is going up, the work's not getting done. In fact, everything's kind of backing up. And so you feel very overwhelmed, which makes it even more stressful. And you tend to not only be hard on yourself about what you're doing, but sometimes that can kind of roll over and you may get irritated with those in your household. That can up the stress level for everybody. So make sure that if you're going to set those parameters, that you set them, you stick with them, and not only do you follow them, but that you share it with others so that they can follow them as well. And that helps keep everyone's stress level down and helps keep peace in the house.
I think it's important for people to set those boundaries and to keep them. And I think that probably setting is easier to do than keeping. And part of that, I think, is that we also tend to like to feel needed. So, when somebody, say, comes to the door and they're not meant to be there, or say quiet time, it's like, it can give some people a sense of, I'm needed, I'm the only one who can do this. No, that's not true. If you keep your boundary, and if the house isn't on fire, nobody's broken a leg, then, you keep doing what you're doing and they can work out whatever the problem is. The thing that I do now, so that's the rule in our house, is if the house isn't on fire, no one's broken a leg or, popped an eye out or something, I'm going to ignore you if you come in to the room. I've got a sign on the door when I'm, say, doing something like this, or if I'm writing and creating creating a program and I need that focus time. If you come in, I'm going to ignore you. And that part's really hard, actually doing that.
Even the cat will test you. It will come in when it's least expected and be pawing out the door. And then you got the little paws underneath the door. I mean, it's like, how can you ignore that? You have to. You're not going to end up having a massive coronary because you've let all of this come down on top of you. Be kind to yourself and have that organization and those lines.
So important, the management of self, rather than, blaming the person who's interrupting you. Yes, they shouldn't be doing that because that's not your agreement. But at the same time, it's all about you and how you lead yourself and how you lead everyone else. Keep your word to yourself.
All right. So now we're going on to tip number 2.
Okay.
One of the things that really helps me, and I'm a very disorganized person, I will admit it. If you were to see my office, look at my desk, it generally looks like my office is thrown up all over. But I know where everything is. It just happens to look like massive chaos. But one of the things that really, really helps me is I make a list. Even though I'm a very technology oriented person, I like having, the paper and pencil type list of items to do. And I'll even write down the stuff that I put on my list to do and I've already done it so that I can cross it off. And it sounds strange that you would want to do that or even need to do that, but a list helps even the most disorganized person. If you write down what you want to accomplish for that day, even if you've already completed the task and then you mark it off, this is a strategy that makes you feel like you've actually accomplishing something.
Yes.
And it helps reduce your stress level because you're able to say, I needed to get all of this done. And guess what? I got this much done. They can always roll over to the next day, but at least this way you're not stressing out about, oh, I didn't get anything done today.
Yes. And you're not wearing your brain out trying to remember all the things you have to do. You've written it down, and that's so important. You've got to write it down. And then once it's down, your brain can let go of that.
Exactly.
Deal with the important things like maybe character development, writing an exciting scene. Yeah. It just frees your mind when you do actually create that list.
Well, I can guarantee you one thing that will happen if you don't write the list is about anywhere from midnight to 3 a.m. That's when you're going to remember it, and you're going to wake up out of a sound sleep with a panic attack going, oh my God, I forgot to do this, or I forgot to write it down.
That is so true. Yes.
It seems like that is invariable. And then what happens? You get a lousy night's sleep, you're stressing out, you wake up stressed the next morning, and it sets your whole rhythm off for the entire day or the entire week.
Yes.
So make those lists, have them around, make sure that you have it in a place where you can see it and you can access it. And anytime you think of something that needs to be done, add it to the list. You can always at the end of the day, take a look, see what you've already done, then rewrite the list with prioritizing what's still left and add anything new.
We must do a podcast on organizing, being organized.
We need one because I definitely could use it.
Oh, I'm excited by that. Okay, we're going to do that one. Yeah, got some great ideas.
And so this leads us into tip number 3. And tip number 3 is probably the most important if you can't do tip number 1 and 2. And tip number 3 is don't be afraid to step away. I mean, step away from your computer, step away from your business, even your family for a few minutes, a few hours, not a few days, because that can get kind of dicey. Even they realize that sometimes you need that time for yourself. So don't be afraid to step away. Do something different. A few minutes, an afternoon, or even a whole day can help reset your internal balance. For me as an author, if I'm not up to writing that chapter today, then maybe I'll be working on a different part of my business. I need to update some images. I found that working on images helps relax me, but work on a different part. Or if worse comes to worse and everything is just feeling like too much, if the clutter on my desk, which is where your organization podcast will definitely come in handy, gets too much for me, I may go have a cup of hot tea, sit out on the swing, and pet the cat. 15 minutes of cat therapy is amazing. Nice hot tea, beautiful day, loud, noisy cat with 2 sharp nails, but who is very affectionate, can help you just kind of go okay, I can do this. And then you're ready to come back in and see things a little bit different.
Yeah, the last couple of months, I've been ending the day at 5:30. I've put there's an alarm in my diary calendar, and goes 5:30, and that's my cue to go for my walk. Just switching off from the business, even just every day at a regular time, go for that walk. It just works things out, and I just feel so much better physically, obviously, but also mentally, because during the walk, things just, go on in your brain, and it's sort of like it moves and shifts the pieces. It does a bit of a Tetris sort of, thing. And it just sets me up so well. Even if I come back and work after, that's not the issue. It's just that everything just seems more productive or more cohesive.
Yes.
Simply because I took that time out and did something which is totally unrelated. And it just gives the brain, I think, enough space to kind of just, rejig and kind of work through any problems, whether it's like, how do I do this? How do I deal with that? How should I say that? How, what's the right thing to write here?
Yep.
All those sorts of things. I think sometimes you just have to let go, get up and go for a walk. Fishing is a similar thing for me, and working on images, definitely. If you find me in Canva when I'm not meant to be there, you know that I'm working through a problem, but I find that visual stimulation is
or,
really good.
if you do cross stitch or you paint, anything, just take that break. Like I said, go brush out the dog or play catch, or there's a lot of things that you can do. Go check out your flowers in the flower bed, take photos. Yes. See what you can see that would be interesting in the flower bed, to take photos of. Our 3 tips for today for coping with life, which it works whether you're an author or a teacher or a professional organizer or anything. Those 3 tips are setting a parameter, make a list, and don't be afraid to step away.
I love them. They're great. As you've been listening to our podcast, there would have been something that would have resonated with you. So, leave us a note, send us a message. What is that? What was it for you from today's session that really just resonated with you? We'd love to hear. And if you have ideas for us, let us know those too, so we can talk about them.
And if you have a question on ways to do any of those 3 tips, both of us have had plenty of experience, and we'd be very happy to share some really creative ideas.
We should do a travel one. I mean, doing business and growing a business, traveling in foreign country. We're both pretty good at that.
As we're hanging out the window going, do you have a signal? Do you have a signal? There's one on this side. Pull over.
Yes, we've done it. We've done it all.
We've done it all.
Oh, look. Plenty of podcast ideas to come up, but do share yours with us as well, so we can focus on what you need as well. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. We've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.